How about we just do a quick introduction, because there's some new people here that weren't here at the first meeting, and some are on Zoom and some are now on Zoom, and we'll go from there. But I'm Jen Townley, and I'm a member of the Developmental Disability Housing Initiative leadership team. I'm working on the coalition committee, and you'll see a lot of members here from the coalition committee, and just thank you for the opportunity to come and have a discussion about affordable housing units and for our adult children that I do. I will call on. Okay, go ahead, Marlon.
I'm Marla McQuiston. I'm also on the Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative leadership team and part of the coalition committee, and looking at a resident of Williston. My son was here, and we're looking for housing for our kids.
Kathy Barwin, member of the DDHI coalition committee, and ditto. Housing is the question.
You're next.
I'm Melinda Scott, senior planner with Williston Planning and Zoning.
I'm Katie Tormey. I again am a parent with DDHI. I have a 34-year-old daughter with Down syndrome who needs a place to live outside of my home.
I am Shannon Helmer. I am a parent of a child who took his own life and would have been in this position. So I have a very vested interest in making sure that these citizens are integrated into affordable housing in communities that can support them.
I'm Delana Norton. I'm the director of long-term supports and services at the Howard Center, and have been working with the subgroup from the DDHI around affordable housing options for adults with developmental disabilities, and really happy to be part of the process.
Hi, I'm Kathy Buscalia, and I'm the director of innovation and special projects for Howard Center, and I too have been working with saying what we can put together to support your sons and daughters.
I lost my display here, so let me do that and see if I can get it back.
There's something comforting in meetings when other entities struggle with technology.
All right, they're not alone. Melinda is not online.
He is, yeah.
Okay.
Because
I just got a text.
Okay.
Yeah, did you want me to introduce myself while you're
Yeah.
getting your screen back up? Matt Belanger, planning director. I work with Melinda and Emily. That's it.
And there are some other folks online as well.
Valerie and
Lisa, do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Lisa Braden-Harder. I'm part of the Racial Equity Partnership and also eager to work on housing as the Housing Committee comes up to speed in Williston. Hello, everybody.
Hi, I'm Valerie Richardson. I'm a parent and part of the DDHI Coalition Committee also.
And I'm Dave Bogdan. I'm a parent and a member of the Housing Coalition Committee also.
Great. Thanks very much. I think that's everybody. So I just wanted to give a little update from the DDHI group, but after our last meeting, we worked with Howard Center, and Howard Center asked us to see if there were the parents that were interested in forming housing here for affordable housing that is stable, permanent, service supported, and to develop a vision for what we were looking for our children. And so we currently have 18 families as part of this group. And I know this is going to evolve and be a dynamic number. Some may drop off in time because some parents are in multiple groups. And I think just shows the demand and interest for finding affordable housing in Chittenden County. We did develop a vision statement, which I'm not going to read the whole thing through, but I did share that with, I believe everybody, Melinda did, I should say, before we went out. But I think we're really looking for a variety of different housing. And I know right now we're looking at Summerfield because they have affordable housing units and it's in a neighborhood, which is a little different than maybe affordable housing in a 100-unit complex, which for me and my son is very much of interest. And looking for some that meet enough, their accessibility needs or universal design. And hoping that we can work together, even as parents, with whatever selected agency that serves it, in some capacity, although we're really not looking to manage it. We're just looking to be like, if one night we decide we want to take some kids out to movies, we take some kids out to movies. But I just know from my own son, I know he's really looking forward to having some choices and options. So if there's any questions of what we're looking for, feel free to ask. And otherwise, I'll just pass it off to maybe Melinda or Matt, if you want to give any updates.
Sure, I can start out off. So planning and zoning staff have kind of put the idea of establishing an affordable housing committee to the town manager, and hopefully that will, you know, we've developed a charge, and the select board will consider the establishment of the committee and the charge hopefully early of next year. And we hope to have a committee on the ground by, no later than the spring, to start working on housing issues. Planning staff recently went to the Northern New England Planning Conference, which was in large part focused on housing issues. So we were able to speak to a lot of our colleagues in the New England area who are working on housing issues, and kind of got my brain kind of turning around, just like all the work that's being done and the different approaches that are being looked at. So certainly educational. The town of Manchester recently also did a housing forum a couple of days ago, actually, and I was able to at least watch that via Zoom. And a lot of good information came out from that as well. There is going to be a lot of funding, federal and state funding available for housing issues in the state, so that is good news. And the town has just adopted the form-based code for the Taft Corners area, which will also really hopefully facilitate the development of affordable housing in Taft Corners. If Matt's here, if he wants to speak a little bit more about that, jump in, but that was good news. So that's pretty much all I have to say at this point.
Sure, and I'll just jump in really briefly on the form-based code. Functionally, a lot of what the form-based code does is opens up a lot of flexibility for the development and redevelopment of sites within the Taft Corners area, especially small sites or sites that have maybe physical space for another building, maybe in an underused parking lot area or something like that. The way the code addresses the matter of density of dwellings is fundamentally different from the way it's handled in the rest of town. And really, as it is in the name of the code, it's focused on the form of buildings and the design of sites. So how many apartments end up somewhere is less of a concern in that code so much as how things are constructed. So generally, when we're looking at residential development happening, flexibility is a good thing. It tends to lead to some cost efficiency and some ability to do some problem solving that otherwise isn't available. There's also some things about the way projects can be reviewed and approved a little more efficiently. As you know, if you're looking at Summerfield, in the rest of Williston, creating new residential units is almost always at least an 18-month development review process. This process has the potential in Taft Corners to be quite a bit shorter than that. And also a lot more specificity about building and site design to make sure that we're getting really nice public spaces that come in, public street space that comes in with these developments, as well as what we call private open area or pocket parks and, you know, gathering places and things like that, that were very important to the Planning Commission in development of the code. So as I always say, it adds flexibility, adds some potential for density, especially in filling small sites, and quote unquote sets the table for the integration of housing at a lot of different price points throughout that area. So we'll see how it goes. It's only been effective since Tuesday and we don't have any applications in yet. So I can't tell you what it's all going to look like. I can tell you that it's very likely to interface with further work the town will be doing, looking at ways to incentivize and possibly outright require different types of affordable housing as a component of major new residential projects. And that's some of the work that Melinda will be heading up, leading out of housing needs assessment, housing committee, and ultimately, you know, more zoning amendments that are supportive of the creation of housing in town. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, and just one more thing I forgot to mention is that, the Vermont Housing and Finance Agency is working on a housing needs assessment. Currently, they just started doing that on that, and hopefully, you know, in a few months, they'll be delivering us something for us to review, so.
Great. Lisa, do you want to update us on anything from the Ulster Racial Equity Partnership?
Yes, well, thanks for having me. And I did want to say to Matt and Melinda, congratulations on getting that form based through. That was a lot of work, but you know, as someone who's looking at housing fairly new, I mean, I think it's a really, really important work. So I saw all the work that you put into that and getting community input and everything. So thank you for that. I'm just here kind of to listen. I mean, I think that in some respects, all of you are way ahead of me. So thank you for including me on listening. In terms of the racial equity partnership, you know, we're currently working on things like a draft land acknowledgement for the town. We recently worked on values, which I hope is a kind of a backdrop to your request to the town. You know, if a town claims certain kind of values, then you would hope to see certain kinds of behaviors out of it. So the Racial Equity Committee has been working on that, or I should say Racial Equity Partnership. That's what's been going on. I mean, what we have been having some conversations about if a housing committee goes ahead, how we can work on the representation on that committee and make sure that we get it right. So we've had talks with different groups. I talked with the Vermont Professionals of Color group, you know, and to ask them what their ideas would be to get some people engaged, either in the current way that we engage people, which is to, you know, ask them to be on the committee and attend town meetings. But if that's not feasible, what other ideas they have to bring those voices into the conversation. So we're just kind of doing that background work. So we have, you know, if we have some suggestions, we can get those in at the time that committee starts to come together, if it does. So thanks again for including me, and I'll plan to listen in and hear what's going on. I think all of you have done some amazing work as well.
Thank you. As I said, Chris Sundasak, I just found out yesterday or Wednesday, wasn't able to join us today, but we did have the opportunity to meet with Howard Center and Chris Sundasak a little over a week ago, just to get a little bit more details behind the brick and mortar and whatnot, and to start having more further conversation on that. And so I'm going to turn over to Howard Center. They want to just give a brief update, and then we can, if there's any additional information that came up out of that meeting, we'll share with the group also. And
yeah, I mean, Chris was amazingly generous with his time to meet with Jen, Delana, and I for well over an hour. And explaining really his process and his thinking and the community that he is working toward developing there. It was really encouraging to hear a developer who seems to be so committed to creating a diverse community, socioeconomically anyway, right? Like it really is hard for us to really create a racially diverse community here in Vermont, but I mean, he really is committed to that and including people with disabilities in that community. So I felt like it was really helpful. You know, he had his plans and explained to us the phases and sort of the affordability, and although he doesn't have price points actually on his residents yet, but it seems pretty promising. And he's very open to different ways for us to approach this in terms of, you know, some entity, person, whatever, purchasing some of these homes for people with disabilities to live in. And so it feels like we are, you know, at the very beginning stages of this and really need to explore further what the options are for securing a home or homes or, you know, in this development. And so we had talked about, and I think we maybe talked about in this group, and we certainly talked about in the committee meetings, are some different ways to structure that, and whether it would be that we would look to a housing authority to purchase the building, whether Howard Center could purchase the building, whether we would have access to, you know, Section 8 vouchers for people living in those buildings. So there's a myriad of different ways to structure this. And so we're just beginning to have conversations with our CEO about, you know, is this something that Howard Center thinks we could, you know, look at purchasing a building? I was in a meeting yesterday with Stephen Murray, who is the executive director of Burlington Housing Authority, and I brought it up to him and said, you know, Howard Center has a couple of different arrangements, memorandums of understanding with DDHI, and would they be interested in perhaps entering into a new arrangement with Williston? So the meeting wasn't about that, but I just took the opportunity to throw that out there as food for thought for him. So he was interested in, you know, thinking about it and talking about it further. So it feels good. It feels like we have some different avenues to explore to bring this to fruition. But that's kind of my, I don't know if you guys have other things to add from that meeting.
I have a question. Was he open to having multiple approaches in the same? As opposed to just one of those things? Even
I think he is. I mean, you know, he wants to sell his properties and he's open to whatever we can bring forward. So, you know, and I think there may be value in having, you know, because he's got carriage houses and houses and duplexes, triplexes, sixplexes. And so it might benefit us to have the people who are going to live there, benefit them to have a couple different options, right? We might want to have a house and then we might want to have a duplex or a sixplex or, you know, so as we move forward, and I think it becomes more clear about who are the potential residents, and then we can say like, what was the best makeup of housing be for those people, and then kind of go from there. But I think he seemed pretty open to a variety of different approaches.
Yeah, and right now I think, well, it's a how we structure. How many can live in a building? But I think there's solutions to that. He was also very flexible to say, hey, we could do this, like we gave an example of community space. So there is going to be community space there in your, let's say, the pool house. But we were even talking about possibly some of our families were looking towards, you know, if you have maybe a bigger home or somebody with a bigger kitchen and dining area, because a lot of these adults are going to need support cooking and aren't completely independent on it. Do you need, so maybe one meal a day, they can come to dinner, let's say together, but they can congregate where there's a place for them to go. Start learning some cooking skills as well as eat dinner together or whatever, just eat. And it's kind of like community within community. And he's like, oh, we could, there's walls that can be moved. There's, so I think, I mean, I found that his designs are usually very And I'm not an expert, so I don't want to imply that, but he's like, well, we need a first floor bedroom, we can maybe make a study into a bedroom, you know what I mean? So I think he's open, and it's kind of like, that's probably, we get down to the 5,000 feet or whatever, but, I thought it was very helpful, and it was almost actually an hour and 45 minutes, so, it was a very good conversation, and I think it's just one thing to think for, but like I said, we don't have price points, we don't know, what building is gonna be maybe less than 80% affordable units, Jamie, and what's the market rate gonna be when we start to open things up. But, as I understood it, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe Matt even want to talk to this, but I think they're pretty close. Would they be filing an administrative permit here in the near future at some point? Or is-
They have their DP. I don't believe have they submitted final plans?
I don't know.
I'm asking them.
I don't believe they've submitted final plans. I think they may do that in the springtime, possibly following their second round of growth management review in March. And if I was to put a crystal ball on this, they're probably, if they're under construction this summer, going to be spending most of that time building infrastructure and maybe getting into the developable portions of some of the single family lots that are, able to be sold or put under contract quickly to recoup some of that infrastructure cost. That's kind of the pattern a lot of these larger projects follow. So I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see any multifamily permits come in until, this time next year at the soonest.
And it'll fall under form-based code at this point, right?
No, because it's outside of that district.
That's kind of what he had said. He said that,
Yeah.
they're gonna file administrative permit. He said, our hope was maybe by next fall, we would be starting the
Yeah.
roads and the infrastructure that all needs to go in there. And kind of had said what section of road and which of the units are that would be for sale. So that's very consistent, man. Thank you. Any other questions? So going forward, I guess, this is like a brand new process for me. Okay, I may not be for all of you. There's just so many questions in that until we get to like the lower levels, to figure all that out. What is a timeline we should shoot for? Maybe just to keep meeting on, like, should we meet every couple months to try to keep moving things forward? What are people's thoughts on that? We keep doing work outside of that, or if there's something we should maybe be working on that, from a planning and zoning standpoint, let's say that what we have considered, or
I was wondering, have you guys ever done a community development block grant before? And is it?
We have not, there's also, there may be grants available through Vermont Housing Conservation Board. I recently, I think it was in the housing forum I was viewing the other day, that noted that there was some funding available to private developers. So, maybe it's worth kind of bringing that to Chris's attention and just maybe kind of having a closer look at that. And just as far as community development block grants, I guess I don't think Williston certainly hasn't done one that I know of in recent years, at least not with the planning department. I think my understanding is that they usually want you to do some kind of planning study prior to getting a community development block grant. And it may be, so I have to say that I haven't really looked into that. Maybe, let's see, what is this? We're into almost November. Maybe it'd be worth getting together, sort of close to the beginning of next year, maybe January or February, to check in again if you want.
Would that be, I guess, what would the goal of that? To think about things in the interim where we can help and then supplement. Would the goals be establishing criteria or, you know, I'm always measurable, what can you accomplish as opposed to. It's gonna be the holidays, nobody's gonna think, you know, things are gonna drop off. What can we be thinking about in the meantime that would be helpful to you guys?
You know, I think continuing to reach out to the partners and, you know, sort of considering partnerships that could help, you know, kind of bring this forward, including potential grant funding, that would be really helpful. For our part, you know, we're gonna hopefully have a housing needs assessment within a few months, and we'll have something to report back from that. We may also, at least be in the beginning steps of establishing a housing committee by early next year. So could, you know, I guess, maybe ask you to do some informal outreach to, I mean, I know that even some of you have been doing that. But, you know, kind of looking for folks who might want to serve on that committee, and I think the committee will probably be 7 people. Our committees typically are. So, you know, doing any kind of outreach, you can around that you think is appropriate. Yeah.
What do you think the housing committee would be doing that would affect this?
So the housing committee would be kind of working with the town administration to, I guess, consider how to use the housing trust fund for one thing. I mean, it's not huge right now. I think, I believe, Jen, I sent you information. I think it was like 70-something thousand dollars.
Maybe after this year.
Yeah. So
It's the next chunk of money that's gonna be.
right. So there's not a huge amount of money in there, but the housing committee would play a role in kind of making recommendations for how that money should be spent. Also would be kind of looking at the needs assessment and seeing, you know, I think what we're hoping to get out of that is some kind of gap analysis, like this is what we have, this is what we need. And, you know, sort of looking at, well, how do we bridge that gap? And, you know, there's a general need for housing, there's a need for affordable housing at different levels. There's also a need for special needs housing, and you know, that's where I think you come in and can sort of, I don't know, be able to advocate for that specific type of housing, what those needs are. So yeah, you know, I guess I'll leave it up to you all, like when you feel like you want to get together again. You know, when you think that people is doing that.
Can I just ask a couple of clarifying questions? This is very huge for me as well. So this $70,000 or whatever it is in this fund, what does that typically get used for, or how?
It hasn't gotten used for anything yet that I know of. It was established 2016. The town decided to establish a housing trust fund to basically contribute funding towards affordable housing.
So is that for the development of housing, or is that for people to purchase affordable housing?
It could be both. It could be either.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's pretty nebulous right now as to.
and this
exact-
committee is gonna help put a
Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then my other question is, this form-based code for tap corners and any, building that will be done there to create affordable housing. Is that, are there projects on the table for that yet? I mean, I guess this is very new, right?
Yeah. Right.
So are we anticipating like developers coming forward to purchase property and propose form-based like affordable housing, and then how might this group get connected to know what that is? Because
Yeah.
maybe some people would have interest in whatever that might be.
Right, so. Right now, we haven't received any applications. We have been having some conversations with developers. Who are, you know, maybe interested in developing in the form-based code district. Not a whole lot. Matt's had more kind of back and forth with folks than I have, so, you know, maybe he's better positioned to speak on that.
And like,
Sure.
where is that district, Matt? Because like, it's pretty dense over there in Top Corners right now, right?
No.
Well, you'd be amazed when
Yeah.
you start looking at the map of Taft Corners, the number of acre, acre and a half, and half acre sites, or buildings like Vermont Sandwich Company and the back center adjacent to it that have been vacant for over a decade.
Right,
Behind CVS, between CVS and Resource, is the
Yeah.
location of a major town and private partnership and state potential project to build a new public street called Trader Lane, which would connect from Hannaford to Texas Roadhouse at Route 2.
yeah,
That unlocks the potential of a bunch of land there. So when we did our vision plan for Taft Corners and doing a very, very extremely rough estimate of development that could happen in Taft Corners without tearing down a lot of existing buildings, we were looking at over you know, a 70 or 80 year build out, maybe 4,000 additional dwelling units.
wow,
So there is a ton of potential in Taft Corners. And I'll just give you, you know, the example of why we think this really unlocks some flexibility. We were until Tuesday measuring allowed density in Taft Corners by dwelling units per acre. Okay. And the base allowed dwelling units per acre was 7.5. So I took a look at a little site. It was a half acre. And under the form-based code, physically on that half acre, I could fit a 3-story apartment building with a parking lot behind it and some parking underneath it, with maybe 28 or 30 one-bedroom units in it. So that half acre would have otherwise supported 3 apartments or 7 studios. But the physical space and the location works just fine for something quite a bit bigger. So our now old zoning really looked at density differently and really left it that if you wanted to do any kind of significant residential project in Taft Corners, you really needed to be starting with, you know, 5 acres. And so, yeah, when you look around Taft Corners, how many places are there that there's 5 acres? Very, very few. Lots of places that are, you know, 1.5 acres and smaller. And even on a half acre site, you could see a significant infill project. So we do think there's quite a bit of potential there for development, redevelopment, infill development, et cetera. It's very likely in the rental market that quite a lot of what comes in will meet the affordable at 100% median level, because that's a very high level. I mean, you're talking a $2,000 a month rent for a studio, and you're meeting affordable at 100% median because we're a very high income region. And what does median mean? It means the middle. That's affordable for half the people, and it's unaffordable for half the people. I think what we do find is if we're going to go into the 80% median or below, it's either going to happen as a component of very, very large master planned projects, or it's going to happen because there's public-private partnership or public-private nonprofit partnership. And just looping back into the question of, you know, what do you do with a housing trust fund? How do you actually use it to make things happen? I think South Burlington is probably the closest model to where Williston might get eventually. They hand their money over to a housing trust that's getting a building done, and it helps offset the cost of building that building. So, you know, I don't want to go through everything we do today, but you know, we have mechanisms to either charge reduced or not charge impact fees at all of affordable projects. We sell sewer capacity from a different available pool, and sewer capacity is our most limiting resource in Williston. So we actually set some capacity aside that we only make available to sell to affordable projects. And we incentivize the inclusion of affordable units in multi-unit projects through our growth management system, which will still be in place even in Taft Corners. So the truth is, without public-private nonprofit partnerships, you're going to see very few things come in that are affordable below that 100% median level. That's where Williston's sitting right now, and why I think it's so exciting that we're, thinking about changing our bylaw requirements, thinking about requiring more affordable units to be included, but I think most importantly, thinking about putting some staff effort and money toward the problem in a way that we've never done before. So hopefully I answered the question somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I just have one quick question that is just a technical question, but I'm wondering if in the form-based code, if there's, when you're thinking about dwelling units, is there a minimum square foot per dwelling and requirements, like it can't be any less than 400 square feet? I mean, are there any minimums or maximums?
No.
No. Okay.
No, you could do micro apartments, you could do 3 and 4 bedrooms. The other thing we've tried to be really flexible on is parking. So a place that's transit accessible and doesn't want to spend as much money building parking. If that's going to work for the people they're looking to rent to, you may see these things coming in with a lower parking requirement as well, which can be a cost savings.
Are you gonna do any 100? I'm just making a joke about the 100 buildings at 6 stories when.
Not anytime soon, and certainly not all at once.
Yeah.
Well, I just think the whole education to the community, what this all means is going to be important.
Yeah.
And really, even on affordable, there's so many assumptions that are made that are false. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned to this group, certainly Melinda and I have talked about it a lot, but we really do hope to use the occasion of getting the housing needs assessment done to start really more coherently telling the story back to the citizenry of Williston about what the gaps are, what we have versus what we need, let alone what the community would like to see. And I've been really kind of pushing on the idea that our needs assessment shouldn't just end with a statement that says, yeah, we need a lot, but rather to say, we need this much in these various categories in order to be the kind of place that people are saying they want the town to be. And as some of you who have had conversations in town know, there are wildly differing opinions about whether or how Williston should meet that gap, including, a lot of folks who are just perfectly comfortable with saying, you know what, not everybody can afford to be here, and I like it that way. It's an exclusive place. I bought in here, and somebody else can't, and that's just fine with me. And we confront that every day. But I think when you bring the numbers to it, when you draw the relationship between the workforce that makes Williston go and makes the part of Williston's economy go that pays for a quarter of the municipal tax burden, which is the retail and hospitality sector, and ask yourself, should the folks who are making that economy go have the opportunity to live in the town they work in, the town they create value in? We have some ability, I think, to get the statement of the numbers of that gap out of the housing needs assessment and turn that around back to the community and say, is this okay with all of you? And if it's not, will you agree to the idea that the town needs to enact policies to close these gaps? And, I think there's a majority view in Williston that will say, yes, we will do those things. I wish we could have had that conversation 5 years ago. We weren't set up to do that, but I think we're going to be doing it over the next year.
You have already mentioned this. When are you anticipating the housing assessment to be complete and ready for the public to view the report?
Well, they're gonna send us a draft of something, I don't know, I would say, I don't know, in a couple of months or 2 to 3 months, and then we'll probably, there'll probably be some back and forth. So I would say probably sometime over the winter, we'll be, putting it out there. Yeah, I don't have a more specific
They don't tell you.
time frame, unfortunately. But,
Is there an opportunity for people to still volunteer input at this point
at this
as
point,
individuals
well,
on the
What-
housing assessment?
I mean, I guess there could be, once we get a draft of something back, then, I think we could, probably will have I would imagine we'd have the planning commission take a look at it and they may have some input. And then during that time frame, if you wanna submit some input, I think that would be fine.
Not for me, I'm thinking of submitting, but not just in this,
Yeah,
as a whole.
yeah, I think that would be fine.
Careful what I volunteer for.
On a different note, if I can, that's right here. So I saw, I think it was in yesterday's Front Porch Forum, that the Glasser property is coming up now again for some type of special. It looks like it's handled differently than, but were there, I couldn't tell from, and again, I didn't get to read through all the documents from 2003 and stuff, but is there affordable units being planned in that development also or not?
There are not any affordables in that development. And they're going through, they have submitted an application for what we call a specific plan, which is basically a way to create some development on that parcel without going through the town's typical process of growth management. And in order for us, so a specific plan is something that gets submitted to the planning commission, and then a small committee is set up to kind of look at the specific plan and kind of shepherd it through the process and provide some input into that specific plan. But mainly, a specific plan can only get approved if there is a significant public benefit to the town. In this case, the public benefit that they're proposing is some dedicated open space. I mean, I think there's a piece right next to Mountain View Road, but there's also a significant portion that currently the Windswept Farm is uses for its operations. So the idea is to just be able to transfer that land to the town and be able to continue, have the Windswept Farm be able to continue its operations as, I guess, the input, a lot of the input that we received, was concerned that they would have to close. So that's sort of the, very early stages of that process. I would, if you're interested in that, kind of stay tuned to the planning commission's meetings and that kind of stuff on the
I was
website.
just curious, I couldn't tell from what I read, and it mentioned it, so I was just curious.
Yeah,
So there was scuttlebutt, what is back that might be. And then I know Snyder's back, still working on his. Is there any other affordable housing units that you're coming through? The Pike?
Is there any in Snyder?
Who did I say? Matt Snyder.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are some.
there are, yeah, I'm trying to think, I don't believe, oh wait, there might be a small one. Matt, is there like that pre-app on Mountain View? Aren't there some,
Trinity.
not Trinity, I feel like I saw. It's very small, but I feel like I saw some affordables, for a small development, that's pre-mapping, but maybe I was wrong. About that, but no others like substantial, projects that are coming through, that are going through.
Yeah, Melinda, I was trying to look up the DRB growth management hearing while you were saying that. If it is, it's a,
Yeah,
single digit number for sure.
yeah.
And I believe it's only 100 or 120% median under the growth management there.
Hmm.
Any other questions or? Anyone through today?
Did you want to set the next one for that?
The dates are the next 2 meetings. So we meet as a regular group. Usually two Thursdays, or 2 Fridays, excuse me, a month. And was 23rd, was it, am I right?
January.
For January.
January of what?
13 and 27.
Yeah.
13 and 27.
Do you guys want to maybe shoot for January 27th? For just another update?
We can do that. I'll see if
Some
I can
people's
get this
calendars
room
look-
again.
That far out. 12:30 again, that time works for people? Oh, for Chris too. Are there any specific questions for Chris? Anybody would like me to follow up with him on?
Did you get a chance to look, get the floor plans from him?
I've asked for them, so I'm gonna follow up on that.
I'd love to see those at the next meeting. That'd be great.
He may have just, I don't know if he just has them in the big side. I know he brought to the first meeting
Yeah.
some of the exteriors. So I'll let you know when I find that.
It'd be good to also look into some of these other funding things and be able to get.
Yeah.
Do you think, Jen, he would, if he is gonna sell these units to a third party, would he do that before they were built?
That's a question for them to answer. I don't know, I was kind of sensing, I don't know, you're similar, but I think he's very, and rightfully so. I think he wants the neighborhood to look a certain way and so I think
Mhm.
he may be more interested in somebody purchasing them, but he building them, but I think that's still a TBD. I mean, we were just, I don't know what your sense was.
Is your question for somebody else to build it?
No, that he would be building it. I'm just,
Yeah.
as a,
I think like a housing trust come in and say,
Yeah.
Let's send you 12, we'll sub you 12.
that we could sort of know that before,
I
maybe
think so.
6
I
or
mean,
9 months
because that's what,
before.
like he was saying, he's gonna take names or take deposits on properties,
Right.
as he's phasing these out. And so that's what I was thinking, like if Howard Center is gonna buy a property or a housing authority is gonna buy a property,
Okay,
that's what we would tell him, like, we want
Mhm.
this property. We're gonna pay you for this and then tweak the floor plan
And
the
these
way,
changes,
you
yeah.
know, so that's my
Yeah,
understanding.
that's kind of my understanding.
Okay.
but-
Um,
all right.
But I think he had shared with me too, but think somebody had already offered by us affordable housing, so, and he wanted, he's like,
Not yet.
I don't want to spread a rumor, so I don't.
That's not
Because
exactly-
I talk to so
affordable,
many people, I just don't remember sometimes who you're talking to.
Right,
he's not building affordable housing in phase one.
No, right.
right.
So,
Yeah,
because like
5
Matt
years.
said, he's trying to pay his, he's trying to recoup some expenses from all this, so. So this is like phase two, right? Unless we all like invent some big money
Win the
that we
lottery.
could buy a market ready.
Or grant.
Right, so,
Yeah, right.
Right.
Is there a good source for grants to go out and look at, or is that, do we go to the state for that?
Well, yeah, I was wondering what you heard about federal and state, because we've talked to Vermont Housing Finance Authority and
Mhm.
Vermont Housing Conservation Board.
Yeah.
And kind of have an idea of what they
Yeah,
have available, the economic development is.
so the,
Economic.
the agency can,
That's hard.
well, right, it's HUD,
Basic
right, like,
simply-
so HUD
Yeah.
has some money, and so
Yeah.
I talked to, a former exec from Burlington Housing, just around this 811
Mhm.
money from HUD, and he was like, nightmare, don't
Yeah,
do 811 HUD money.
Yeah, I mean, I know Agency of Commerce and Community Development has some grants and, it might be worth, I mean, if you would like, I can maybe reach out to them and see if I can get some information on,
We did meet with them,
You did,
Josh, and,
okay, so then you,
and we know the local guy.
yeah,
Alex. Oh, yeah, Alex Farrell is, actually has a younger brother with Down syndrome.
okay,
But, and they offered to help extensively if we were pursuing a community development block grant.
okay,
They were like, come to us, we can help get through
Okay.
this. So,
yeah, well, that sounds good.
yeah. Yeah, I just wondered if you had heard it from other things
No.
at that conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really Agency of Commerce and Community Development and Vermont Housing Conservation Board and DHFA. I mean, I can flip through the slides again, maybe Matt, if he remembers differently, but there may be some others in there that I,
Yeah, we
That I
actually
missed.
we did have a meeting with those,
yeah,
and someone else about midsummer,
yeah.
and they kind of tried to
Okay.
all give us some input too.
Mhm. Yeah, so, I'm happy to also kind of put some feelers out and try to look into this a little more and see, where this could go.
It was really great, that was
Yeah.
great.
Mhm.
Great, so we have some work to work on, continue working forward to push it forward, but thank you everybody for your time today. And I am glad too that the form-based code did pass. Those seeking affordable housing and, have a great holiday. I'm sure we won't talk to you before then, but, sometime in January, early January, I'll connect. If I don't connect with you before then, Linda, and we'll get something set up. And thank you for your help today with getting the terminology and reporting it. If you just send me a packet with one, and we'll just.
Yeah, we'll do, and I'll click a few notes. and I'll
Okay.
send you my-
That sounds good. We all can get lots of notes. We'll probably put it all together. That would be great.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Matt. Say hi to
Thank you.
Emily.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.